think we'll move on to our next presentation. So I have the pleasure of introducing Jacey Hall, and she's a scientist from the Environment Program of the Mohawk Council of Aquazona, and she's going to do a presentation on one of my favorite subjects, on wetlands. So take it away, Jacey.
Okay, hello, I'm Jacey Hall. I work with the Mohawk Council of Aquazona program, Environment Program, and I'm currently working on the Aquazona Wetlands project. Okay, hopefully that'll change. Oh, there we go. So I'm from Aquazona. I've spent most of my life on the St. Lawrence River. I went to the University of Guelph and I got my Bachelor's of Science in Wildlife Biology and Conservation. I've also completed the Environmental Technician program at St. Lawrence College. And I've worked in the environment field since I was 18 and mostly as a summer student. And I don't plan on leaving this field. Okay, next. So if you're not familiar with Aquazona, it's a reserve of mostly Ganyak-Gahaga or Mohawk people situated along the St. Lawrence River. It is divided by the Canada-US border and further divided by the Ontario, Quebec, and New York state boundaries. We have three forms of government: the Mohawk Council of Aquazona, which is the elected council on the Canadian side, and the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Council, which is the elected council on the American side. And then there's also the Mohawk Nation Council of Chiefs, which is our traditional form of government. So as you can see, we're in a very unique and complex situation. Next. Okay, so this map is from the Canadian Wetland Inventory. I've zoomed into Aquazona, and as you can see, these are the different wetland types that exist in our region. Next. So I've zoomed in a little bit closer, and as you can see, Aquazona has all 5 of the wetland types. We mostly have swamps, marshes, and open water wetlands, but we also have a couple of fens and bogs. Next. Okay, so what is a wetland? Wetlands are defined by the presence of water, which can vary from permanently flooded to seasonally or rarely flooded. However, regardless of how much water is present, wetlands usually retain hydric soils, which form due to being saturated with water and having a low oxygen content. With these soil conditions, only plants that are adapted to wetlands are able to establish themselves and survive. So where can you find a wetland? Wetlands can be found all throughout the landscape. Some wetlands are transitional zones between upland terrestrial ecosystems and aquatic ecosystems, while others are formed in upland depressions where water collects from rain or runoff, or as well as from where groundwater might come close to the surface. Okay, next. So there are 5 major wetland types. The shallow open water, wetlands, marshes, swamps, fens, and bogs. And wetland type is determined by the local hydrology, water chemistry, such as pH, the soils, and the plant community. Next. So for the first type, shallow open water wetlands are also sometimes called ponds. They are usually filled with shallow water, which can fluctuate seasonally. When this does happen, mudflats sometimes can be exposed. Generally, only submerged and floating vegetation is able to grow here, although you can sometimes find emergent vegetation too. The nutrient level of these ponds can vary from good to poor, but they are usually fairly nutrient rich. Okay, next. So marshes are almost always flooded with water. There may be some fluctuation though. Marshes are nutrient rich. They have a neutral pH, and they can support an abundance of different plants and animal species. You can usually find marshes along or near lakes and rivers. And then swamps have seasonal standing water, which sometimes disappears during hot summers. However, even if there isn't any water there, swamps usually still have saturated soils. And like marshes, swamps are nutrient rich and able to support many different plants and animals. Swamps can also be found near or in forests, and they're usually dominated by trees and shrubs. Next. Okay, so the last two types are fens and bogs. So for fens, they're usually characterized by the formation of peat. Unlike marshes, fens have high pH or alkaline water. The nutrient level is less than that of marshes and swamps, but it's higher than it is in bogs. Therefore, these wetlands are still able to support a fair amount of plants and animals. On the other hand, bogs which are also characterized by peat formations. However, they have low pH or acidic water, which is usually filled by rainwater, and they have low levels of nutrients and they're not able to support as many plants or animals. Okay, next. So a unique feature of any wetland type is that only plant species that are adapted to the local hydrology and saturated soil conditions are able to survive and thrive. These plants are often referred to as hydrophytes. And the composition of the plant community varies with each wetland type, and animals can vary depending on what plants are present. Many animal species depend on wetlands for a variety of reasons. Some use wetlands to complete all or part of their life cycle, while others use wetlands to look for food, shelter, and breeding and nesting opportunities. Okay, next. Okay, so why are wetlands important? This is just a short list of ecosystem benefits that wetlands provide to us. I won't go over everything, but I will mention that I'll talk a little bit more about biodiversity in the next slide. Next. There we go. So what is biodiversity? Basically, biodiversity means the variety of life in an ecosystem or on Earth. Why is it important? Biodiversity is essential for many ecological, cultural, and economic reasons. All life on Earth is connected. There are complex relationships that exist between and within ecosystems, habitats, and species. If you damage or lose even one part of this system, you can greatly impact the rest of it. High biodiversity supports these connections and complexity, which maintain ecosystem services and productivity, as well as improve stability, resistance, and resilience of our ecosystems to change. This means that our ecosystems are better able to withstand and recover from disasters and the effects of drastic climate change. Wetlands actively store and naturally cycle carbon, thus moderating climate. As these habitats are degraded and destroyed, we lose many plants and animals, as well as the ability to buffer the effects of global climate change. Wetlands provide many of the natural resources that we depend on to support our culture and economy, including medicines, food, timber, and so on. Next. Oh. There we go. So there are some major threats to wetlands. I think the greatest threat to any habitat, especially for wetlands, is ignorance and apathy. This attitude often leads to putting priority on urban development, changing the way water flows by constructing dams, polluting our lands and waters with garbage and other contaminants, and doing very little to combat the spread of invasive species and climate change. We end up destroying our natural areas and a piece of our heritage and culture. So what can we do? Firstly, increase education and awareness in our community. This will help facilitate the protection and conservation of our wetlands through laws, restoration. Next. So what is our responsibility? As Aquazona, it's our responsibility to take care of our environment. This includes the species and habitats that we find in our territory. We have the ability to greatly impact our local ecosystems. So let's make sure it's a positive impact. Next. So how do we take care of our environment? First, we need to understand our wetlands. And with this in mind, we came up with 2 questions that have been brought up by community concerns. Next. So we come to the Aquazona Wetland Project. So the MCA Environment Program began the project in September of 2019. And throughout phase 1 and 2, I've been experimenting with different methodologies and ecological monitoring and education/outreach approaches. So this is just a quick overview of the activities that I've been involved with during phase 1 and phase 2. I've conducted 2 wetland biosurveys, 2 drone surveys, and I'll be using the data that I've collected from these to develop a long-term monitoring protocol. In addition, I've also been working on different ways to educate and raise awareness in my community. Next. So far, we've been doing our surveys in 1 wetland. This is the Bittern Creek Marsh, which is located in the district of Jacey. The area is about, it's over 500 acres of marshland, and this is just one of the small areas of our wetland complex that we've been able to start studying. Next. So for phase one, our sampling methods were a little bit less formal as we got to know the wetland area and the challenges for fieldwork. We've gathered species data from our field surveys as well as from discussions with community members. We've focused mostly on vegetation with the occasional opportunistic observation for other species. We tried to select sites every 50 to 100 meters, kind of in like a transect line, sort of. However, for phase two, there were some revisions that I had to make, and I had to refine my methodology since I had a better idea of what to expect in the marsh. And due to the size of the marsh and how difficult it was to travel through, I decided to divide the area into different zones. So like, if you remember back to that map I showed, there were some outlines in different colors. So those are the different zones. And that just makes it a little bit easier to focus on a specific area. We've still been focusing on vegetation surveys, but we've also tried to add in bird surveys and the use of minnow traps and hoop nets. So here are the results for phase one and phase two. As you can see, plants are the largest group identified in phase one. In phase two, we've been able to add more to our list of animal species. I would like to mention that we're not quite done with the species surveys for phase two, so we'll probably be adding more species soon. Next. So in addition to our species surveys, we've completed some aerial surveys using a drone to map the wetland area and the vegetation patterns. This map is from last fall, and we are currently planning to do another UAV survey next week to capture the vegetation patterns for this year. And I'll be comparing the two maps to see if there's any changes in vegetation between years. Okay, next. So this is a map from the survey we conducted in late spring, early summer of this year. I was hoping to also do a species survey, but I wasn't able to because of COVID-19. So we weren't able to get out in the field then. But yeah, this map is just gonna help us with documenting the vegetation patterns during a more productive time of the year. With all of this in mind, my ultimate goal is to develop a long-term monitoring protocol. So I'll be using the species data and the map data to help me create this protocol. Okay, switching gears, I'm going to be going over some different events that were planned and hosted to engage our community and promote education and awareness. Firstly, I organized our 5th annual World Wetlands Day early this year. We had about 50 to 60 people who came from the community to see the different informational booths and activities that were available. Next. Okay, and then after World Wetlands Day, I organized and hosted a school presentation at CCBS in Cornwall. We had over 100 students from between grades 9 and 12 come and listen to our presentations and participate in the activities that were available. Because this was the first time I've done this type of event, I only focused on the Native students. However, the principal was interested in extending the event to all of the students in the future. And this past summer, I got my community involved in a backyard BioBlitz. I had to make some adjustments to our original plan due to COVID. So everything was somewhat online, other than the participants making observations in their own backyard. And to help with this project, I used iNaturalist to gather the species data. Next. So in addition to the iNaturalist app, I created a Facebook group for the participants to post questions and discussions, and to get help from some of our species experts. Next. So it came to my attention in the early summer that many people may not be familiar with how to identify the species in our area. This came about when a colleague told me about a student she was teaching who wasn't able to identify a red-winged blackbird. The student asked her, "What's that blackbird with the red wings?" So they're fairly common around here, and it just surprised me how this student unfortunately didn't know what a red-winged blackbird was. So with that in mind, I organized several species ID presentations with the help of many different organizations and species experts who were able to create presentations and do them online. Okay, next. Okay, so throughout phase 1 and phase 2, we've created several educational items, from posters and brochures to fact sheets, videos, and Facebook posts. This is just a few examples of the items that have been completed, and there are still more that are in progress. Next. So before I end, I just wanted to give a special thank you to the many organizations and people who've helped me with this project. I know I wouldn't have been able to get as much done as I have without their help. So thank you. Next. I'll go, and thank you for listening to me. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you so much, Jacey. You're a wonderful field biologist and educator. I got a really nice comment here I want to read you from Jordan. Jacey, thanks for providing a good reminder of different wetland types as well as why they're so important. I know some of our current St. Lawrence College environmental technician students are watching right now, and I hope they're learning from your overview. So you've reached a really good audience, Jacey. And I have one question. So if you were to give the people watching right now one word of advice on how they can get involved in wetland conservation in their communities, what would it be?
Probably just to get out there to, find a local wetland, or any conservation authorities or parks that might have wetlands. It'd be great to go there and kind of see what's going on, see if any organizations have events that are going on, or even, just contact your local environmental agency that, and see if they have a need for volunteers.
That's great, Jacey. So there you have it. Go out and find a wetland near you. And I think that's the best way, as Jacey said, to get involved in wetland conservation. We don't have much time for other questions, but JC and Bailey, you guys are getting so many wonderful comments in the chat box. So I hope you have the time to read them. You're getting a lot of really good feedback. So great. Thank you so much, JC.